Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Richard Morchoe. I'm here with Gus Steeves.
Hello,
This is the Long Hill Report, and a lot of news this week, the last few weeks. President Biden went on TV and supposedly debated Donald Trump. I did not watch it.
We did.
But they did.
We did.
Gus,
It was a horror show.
yeah, he had been assigned penance for something. He must have. That's the only. But I certainly was not up for doing it. I heard a lot of the after-action reports. One of the big things is there was a mass epiphany in. Everybody uses the term now, far right. Among the far left, mass epiphany was Biden, Joseph, the president, might not be a genius. It's just an outside possibility that this guy is
A few marbles.
maybe not even the sanest person in this world. That he's been on a lunch hour, a long lunch hour.
Like the last 40 years.
And of course, people in his own party are kind of shocked. A couple of days before, I don't know if anybody, I rarely see him. I see his, people bring up stuff to me, recordings of a guy called Morning Joe.
Yep.
Joe Scarborough.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days before, he was, Biden is the sharpest Joe Biden I've ever seen.
That's not saying much, really.
Well, it basically says Joe Scarborough is as much an idiot as, well, I don't want to say the president is less than complimentous, but it's just, but I mean, how one it was a Oceania has always been at war with East Asia moment.
Or Eurasia.
Or Eurasia moment. Well, the change is what,
Yeah.
the day before was Eurasia, now it's East
Yep.
Asia. And it's just, says what a vast joke the American political nation is. A vast
Unfortunately,
joke.
it's going to be really, really bad. And what's really scary is the people who run the show, who are not really the Democratic or the Republican parties,
The donor party.
They don't seem to really care. Yeah,
No.
the donor party. They don't really care that the fact that the two major party candidates are both clowns.
That won't,
And one of them is clearly has Alzheimer's or some sort of dementia, and the other one is completely incapable of actually answering questions in a debate.
well, I will say this about that because I've talked to people about Trump in the debate,
Mm-hmm.
and they said they kind of thought he was just sort of staying a little away from getting too much in it because, as Napoleon said, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
There's some truth to that, but my point is that
I don't know, I
for
didn't watch
for
it.
at least 4 of the questions, Trump completely refused to answer the question. And that I think that's really telling as far as the fact that nobody actually came back to him and tried to get him to actually answer the question.
It was telling in
and
what
it
sense?
says a lot about, it's in so many ways, because it says a lot about the way the media running those kinds of debates, first of all, doesn't actually care about informing the public. And they did not, they were much more interested in letting him harp on his border issues and 1 or 2 other relative things that Biden would mention, and then he would harp on that for the next the whole next question without actually answering the question. And let him throw darts at Biden, and to some degree Biden was throwing darts at him, but not very effectively.
See, this I didn't watch, but
But it wasn't. It was a joke.
well, see, this is the thing about that. Previously, on the other debates, I saw the debate, the last election. After a while, I don't pay attention to them because it's not.
Yeah, same here.
It's nothing really much fun, but they didn't. Nobody I talked to said they were really trying to put the shiv in his, in his kidney or anything like that.
You mean for this debate or the last?
For this debate.
That's probably true.
So,
Basically, that's
what
true,
would you do? I would have been if I were there and Biden were making a fool of himself, which supposedly he did. I would be reticent to say too much.
Yeah, and I that makes sense too. I mean, you don't have to really.
Yeah.
And I think really, I don't know if you saw the quote unquote debate that RFK did, where he was being recorded and interspliced between the comments from Biden and Trump to answer the same questions. And also, Jill Stein did a similar post-debate show where she was talking about the same issues, although she wasn't specifically answering the questions. She went on for an hour just talking about the issues. She didn't have the 2 or 3 minute time limit that the candidates had as the debate was going on. And I think the U.S. would be in much better shape if we had the two primary candidates being Kennedy and Stein than the two that are the true primary candidates. For a whole slew of reasons. Not just the fact that the two of them actually know what they're talking about, whereas the two primary candidates don't.
That we'd be better off. Where do you? I'm not convinced about RFK. He's got a big bandwagon.
He does.
When he went full on for the war in Gaza,
I don't like that part of it, absolutely.
I was out the door.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
As to Jill Stein, she's always been, and we can mention here, he's not.
Oh, yeah, I'm worried.
He's not advertising the Jill beverage, Jill beer that you can get and put in your Stein. He's talking about the candidate.
Yes.
I love her and the wars thing. Other than that, I'm not huge on it.
Well, I know. I mean, you're more of a libertarian, and I'm a Green,
Yeah.
so that's not a surprise.
But if I were going to vote here in one party, North Korea, called the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I would probably, I'm not sure who's going to be the Libertarian candidate.
I think it's Chase Oliver.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm wild about him. So Jill might have to put up with it, with the indignity of me voting for her.
Well,
which,
she'll appreciate it, yes, if we can get her on the ballot.
But that's only because, and the wars, she's been consistent on
Very
that.
much so, yes.
And sanity does not inhere in supporting either of the wars we're involved in.
Absolutely. Or any of the other wars that they seem to want to get us into.
Yeah, and well, we're in a pivot to Asia.
And if we're talking about, just for a quick second, if we're talking about debates, tomorrow night, Jill and Chase Oliver and what's his name, Randall Terry from the Constitution Party are doing the next free and equal debate.
Free equal.
It's called the Free and Equal Debate,
And they're going to,
and that's actually being recorded in Las Vegas tomorrow night.
oh,
So-
well, you can bet on that. I know you will. But
I don't intend to bet on it, but I will probably watch it.
I probably will not watch it, but I want, I will.
I mean, I don't watch it tomorrow night.
I
but
hope
we'll
you will.
watch it at some point.
Well, I hope you will give us a report on it next month.
If I remember it.
I'm not getting any younger here.
Neither am I.
Like as we said earlier, before we went on the air, I'm older than I've ever been. But I know that's true about you.
This is probably true, yes.
So
I may wake up younger tomorrow, you never know.
that is devoutly to be wished, to the words of William Shakespeare. Okay,
Right.
now getting into another subject, you know, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, we are at war. We are in 2 wars, maybe going for a third.
And a bunch of side wars that that never get mentioned.
There's only so many hours in a day, my good man. Anyway,
There's only so much space in the press that they can't devote to advertising.
well, that's what pays the bill.
Supposedly.
Anyway, the war going on in Russia and in Ukraine was fostered by the United States starting in 2014 at the Maidan coup.
At least.
We have pushed and pushed and pushed that until there was an invasion by Russia. And we have, instead of calling for negotiations, working towards peace, seeking out any kind of agreement that could work, we have been starting out by saying, oh, we're never going to get planes, but now it turns out we're
tanks or missiles or X or Y.
F-16s. We're giving every tank we can find, every bit of weapons. Now there's a type, I do not know the ins and outs of this, but there is a type of weapon called the Himars. It's some kind of rocket thing. And you need a crew to man it. Or possibly even woman it, I guess. Anyway,
Somebody.
they've been firing these Himars from the Ukraine side at the Russians. Russians getting a little tired of it.
Well, specifically because about what, 2 weeks ago, some of those HIMAR missiles hit a beach in
they hit a beach in
Crimea.
Crimea at Sebastopol and killed civilians.
Yep.
So the Russians got a little tired of that, and they used some of their weapons, precision weapons, to destroy where the command and control was of these HIMARS.
Yep.
It has been reported that the people, or the staff, the military staff, specialists, that were targeting these HIMARS rockets, were Americans. And that 35 of them are killed.
Yeah.
What do we do now?
Well,
What
honestly,
do we do now? I'm asking it as kind of a rhetorical question because I do not believe. The Western press is studiously avoiding mentioning this because it's big.
Oh, yeah.
It's really, really big, and it says how stupid this country is.
And the part of the problem I think is that obviously the HIMARS would be run by, if they're in fact U.S. people over there, they're not mercenaries. They're most likely actually uniformed military people. But the problem is there's been evidence throughout this war that there are mercenaries from U.S. and other Western countries in the Ukraine on a regular basis.
But I think the HIMARS had to have been, if somebody who was at least trained.
Oh, I agree.
And operating up until just a short time before this as U.S. military. Now, there's a possibility you can give a discharge to those people, but still pay them or something, and just send them there. And that's
theoretically, I suppose that's good. They could. I'm sure they could have finagled something like that. Yes.
But I suspect they are rated specialists of the U.S. military.
I mean, there were, I don't know if you remember, but a while, maybe a year or so ago, there were allegations that a Russian missile attack on some command post, I want to say, when it was either in Kiev or one of the other Western Ukrainian cities, took out several NATO officers.
Yeah, I'd heard that too.
And of course, that got buried. Because they do an awful lot to try blow smoke about how strong NATO is in face of the Russians and how weak the Russians are and all this other nonsense, how the Russians are losing the war and yada yada, and the Ukrainians are winning, yada yada. And it's obvious they're all lies.
Yeah.
And it's all about making defense company profits while they do everything they can to downplay the fact that it only takes tripping over the wrong lizard to start World War III over there at this point.
It's actually a lizard?
Or the wrong tripwire or the wrong
mine. Tripwire, okay.
Or bombing the wrong beach.
Bombing the wrong beach, yeah.
I mean, following up that beach thing, I was also reading that, and this is when it wasn't reported in mainstream press either, and I'm not quite sure where you got it. It was from John Helmer's website, but I don't know where he got it.
I got it from Helmer.
Where he was referring to the idea that that after the Crimea, the Sevastopol beach killings, the U.S. The Russians threatened all of the circling drones in the Baltic Sea, so we recalled them all, and now they're being done by actual manned jets, which is stupider, which is incredibly stupid.
Well, if you want to know,
I don't know where he got it from because he doesn't cite it, but
one thing we will know, if we do take out, if the Russians take out a jet, one of our jets, I suspect the news will go silent in that, and you'll hear
that's
about it.
quite possibly true.
You'll hear about it from Helma.
Probably true. I mean,
but it is mindlessly stupid.
It is mindlessly stupid. I mean, I think the problem is that the media, the way our country's media is so craven to about telling the truth, the big media is, that it will basically take like sinking an aircraft carrier for them to finally wake up and go, oh my God, we're actually walking on the precipice of World War III.
Well, see, here's the problem with the aircraft carrier scenario. I think it's quite possible.
Yeah.
Or
something similar. It may not be an aircraft carrier per se, but something similar.
Well, bless you. I actually don't think an aircraft carrier hit. They did hit one, and it did some minor damage. But
Are you referring to the Yemenis in this case, though, right?
The Yemenis,
right.
the Houthis.
Right.
I don't think Russia intends to hit unless we were to do hit something really, like
Right.
bomb something in Moscow or something,
Right, sure.
really stupidly.
Right.
And the Russians do. I think the Houthis can cause an aircraft carrier to have to limp back to port and get some repairs. I don't think they're near capable of destroying an aircraft carrier. I think the aircraft carrier is becoming more and more obsolete as
It
day
is.
goes by.
It's basically a giant target.
Yeah.
And most people know that. Well, although I think there's been some evidence, I've been reading some bits and pieces, I don't know how true it is, that the Houthis have actually started playing around with hypersonic missiles.
First of all,
The question there is, are they native hypersonics, or are they actually getting them from the Russians?
I think they're getting them from Iran.
Or Iran,
If they were getting them. And I think probably Iran is giving them some instructions, maybe giving them some parts, but I don't think they're getting the whole thing from Iran.
They're probably not.
At this point.
They're probably not. I think that's true.
All right. My next, and I'm going to let you go on with things, is back in the early 2000s, there was a book called Hubbard's Peak, and I reviewed it, and I remember it, and it basically said, we have reached the point where we're at the peak of oil, what is available in oil.
Right.
It was right and it was wrong. It was wrong. It was right as, oil is a wasting asset and it's going away at some point. It was wrong in that they came up with a trick of shale oil.
Yes.
And where we were able to keep going, and actually we saw in relative terms, considering inflation, actual price declines for quite a while in oil, but
And
it's
the actual
back.
production quantity of production, at least in the U.S., went up
It's back.
for over the last 10 years or so.
The peak oil.
Yes.
And we are running out of even the shale oil and gas.
Yeah.
As a fellow Art Berman, I watched
I'm familiar with it.
a couple of videos with him and saw it as fairly interesting. And basically, he doesn't say it's at the end of the world. He says we've got to go. We've got to think about being the 1950s instead of we can do everything. We can still use as much oil as we want.
Right.
And I suppose that's true. We're in for changes in the oil situation.
Well, I mean, I think if it makes a lot of sense if we can get our heads around the fact that, quite frankly, we waste so much energy now anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, even the U.S. government figures, I think it's the EIA, the Energy Information Agency's figures show that, at least with energy transmission, and I think it applies to oil as well, but the figure I'm citing specifically is electricity, that the wastage is somewhere along half between the source of production and the actual end user. You lose like half of the energy supply.
Well, then you also
With oil, I think it's so much wasted in the sense that we use so much more stuff that's plastic and petrochemical and so forth than we actually need to use.
Well,
I mean, good point. Example, just look at this room. Look at how many lights are on in this room.
the oil situation is with plastics is that's what you can do with that part of the oil. We don't need it, but that's what you can do with it. So if you're going to drill the stuff and you get some of it that's for this, use it for that, I guess. But you know, we're going to have to adjust to it, but probably we will. But the biggest waster is involved what we were talking about before.
The military.
It's the military. You know,
Absolutely.
you got to imagine what the Eisenhower, which got hit by the Houthi drone.
Right.
You got to wonder how much oil and gas is being used.
Well, just think about it, like, for example, in terms of aircraft, we constantly have aircraft in the sky that really are doing nothing but just flying circles of all kinds.
Oh yeah.
Whether we're mentioning the ones about that I mentioned over the Black Sea, or the ones that are flying along the Russian borders, you know, just playing cat and mouse games with Russian jets, who are doing exactly the same thing, you know, and all this other stuff that spy jets that go around and really aren't doing anything except flying and trying to pick up signals from one place or another.
It's a waste.
And all the submarines that are squirreling around under the ocean doing really nothing.
Do you want me to argue with you that it's not a waste?
Oh, it's totally a waste. I agree with you. It is a waste. I'm just pointing it out. That's all these stupid things that are just wasteful.
Well,
Never mind blowing up stuff and having to rebuild it. That's stupider. That's even more wasteful.
we'll let you get on to one of your topics.
Well, a lot of the topics, actually, most of the topics you were going to bring up are the ones I was going to bring up anyway. So,
Right, great minds travel in the same path.
someplace, yes. Like I was thinking about, to go back to the whole Ukrainian situation, I think it's especially disturbing that in the last couple of weeks, we've seen, to go back to what you mentioned earlier about our government's quote unquote red lines, you didn't use the term, but they've called them that, about we would never do X, and then we do X. Then we say we'll never do Y, and then we do Y. By now, we've never done X, Y, Z, P, D, Q, and alpha. And we're never going to do beta, and we're going to do beta tomorrow, probably. So let's see. They've mentioned in the last couple of weeks about starting the F-16 transfer to Ukraine. This is not directly related to the war in Ukraine, but about the fact that they are talking about an agreement to put U.S. mid-range nuclear cruise missiles in Germany by 2026. Excuse me, we did that in the 1980s. It was stupid then, it's stupider now. I mean, does anybody remember the MX Peacekeeper missiles?
Yes.
That created huge uproars of protests in Europe? They're doing it again. These people are stupid. I mentioned the drones, the shift from drones to pilots of the Black Sea, the ongoing dribble of declassified reports indicating that the U.S. new NATO expansion would worry and then anger the Russians. You mentioned this starting back in 2014. It actually started back in like 1991.
Oh, yeah.
In one form or another, because we had no respect for them. We didn't bother to listen.
We didn't have any respect for our own word.
That too. Well, that's part of the problem is that they, at the time, they made the promise not to do it, and they may have meant it at the time, but the problem is we have a system that is encouraging, that quite frankly helps promote sociopathic behavior. So we're now run either by sociopaths who absolutely don't care about what other people's concerns are and see them as weakness, or we're run by crazy people who are incapable of understanding other people's concerns.
So you don't think a sociopath is a crazy person?
In some senses they are. There's certainly overlap. There's plenty of overlap. But in some cases, I think the sociopath is not clinically crazy because our system favors and selects for it, which is scary and in the long run crazy.
You know my theory of unsanity.
I don't know if I do.
Okay. There was a woman, Marie Hoff. She was in the State Department during the Obama administration. And it came up that she was asked, about what's happening in the Middle East and are we defending against some group or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, look, we're taking out a lot of the terrorists. We're killing a lot of them. But we got to get them jobs. Now, when they were dying, as they bombed or something, they weren't shouting, "I want a job at Goldman Sachs," or "Let me in America and I'll work happily at Burger King." They were shouting, "Allah Akbar."
Allahu Akbar.
And this woman said that.
Yeah.
Now she's perfectly put together. One of these spokes flax, like, well coiffed, everything, lovely looking blonde woman. She could get up in the morning, she was not raving mad, frothing at the mouth, and going crazy. But she said something that was barking mad.
And we hear that a lot in the government right
But
now.
that is what these people do.
I agree.
It's not
Absolutely.
not a sane thing.
I agree.
It's
Absolutely.
unsanity.
Yes, it is.
And your host here is the head of the School of the Study of Unsane Conditions. Now, if you want to apply, the tuition isn't light, and we will make you a doctor of the study of unsanity.
As opposed to being a doctor of insanity.
Well, that depends on how you answer.
To be the doctor of insanity gets you to be Secretary of State, I assume, right?
Probably, because that lad's pretty done.
Daft.
Gone over the edge. But
Yes.
I'm not sure about Blinken. I believe Blinken knows what he's supposed to be doing, and it's not good. Don't get me wrong.
But the point is, if you know what you're doing and it's not supposed to, and it's not good, and you don't
You're just
challenge
evil.
it, yeah, exactly. You're not necessarily unsane. You're evil.
You're evil.
I agree.
Now, Marie, I think
Yes.
was unsane.
Although in some cases, when you have a society or a governmental structure that favors sociopathic behavior, where does unsanity shade into evil, or vice versa?
Well, first of all,
It's really hard to distinguish because
you have to now, when you said that, what you just said, you have to kind of say maybe that is democracy. It favors bad behavior.
I don't think it does in general.
I
think our system currently does. The fact that our system is
Tell me
grotesquely
when it
corrupt.
didn't. Tell me when it didn't.
I think, as I said, the democracy as a whole does not. But I think that the way our system has become so corrupted and taken over by largely anti-democratic forces, mostly for greedy reasons, favors sociopathic and unsane behavior.
When didn't it do that, though?
I think if you look at most tribal societies, they don't have that
We're
issue.
not a tribal. We're not going to be a tribal
We're
society.
not, but that's
But
just the point.
when I'm talking about a democracy,
That is a democracy.
No. Okay.
In the small case, small
All
d
right,
democracy,
all right.
most of them are small
Wait
d
a minute.
democracies.
Wait a minute.
Have you ever read David Graeber?
I've heard of him. I have read.
He talks a-
Whoa! You have. I have read Thucydides'
Okay.
account of the Peloponnesian War.
But you got to remember
No,
that was
let me
based in a
finish my
culture
sentence.
that was
Let me finish
already
my
that
sentence.
way.
Let me finish my. And I read the debates in the Athenian Assembly
Yeah.
as to should we go to Sicily. And this is the most democratic society in probably in the world at its time.
Of the ones who could
the
write.
Athenian Assembly, at its time, it's most democratic.
And
Greatest
it practiced
greatest
slavery.
Yes, I know that.
And it had about 10% of the
Enough.
people who
Listen.
actually participated.
Try to listen.
That's not democratic.
Try to listen. Citizenship, everybody had a say. And they went and did the stupidest war. They went to Sicily,
Yep.
and it was foolish.
Uh-huh.
But they went it with the full approval of the assembly,
I'm not going to
and
disagree
it
with
was
that.
foolish, and it was between power-mad people.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
And as we have, unfortunately, at this hour, we're off hour in, I'll let you get the last word.
Well, just to follow up on what you just said, I think that when you use Athenian democracy as an example,
I use it as an exemplar.
the issue is that Athenian democracy didn't include a huge number of the people that were actually living in Athens.
We do that. We do know that.
And
But
that makes it
that would make
seriously
it.
weak.
I
That makes it
believe that would
seriously
have made it
undemocratic.
worse. I would believe that would made it.
I don't think it would have.
Worse
If
than
the
hysterical.
more people that are participating and actually have the right to speak and participate in the process fairly, I think gives better answers in the long run. It often takes longer,
I quite
but
disagree.
it does take longer to work out the
We will disagree
system.
to disagree.
But I think that's kind of a lot of what we saw in world history if you read David Graeber.
We will disagree to disagree, as opposed to agreeing to disagree.
Whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for appearing with us, for being here with us, I mean. This is Richard Morchoe with Gus Steeves. Thank you for coming to the Longer Report.
Have a good summer.